Hey guys, this is Coach Bearline, just giving you your first installment of your video lessons. So what you can do is you can follow along with these lessons and fill in your note sheets and study those and use that information to prepare yourself for quizzes and tests. Whenever you're ready to take the quiz over this section, you can do that anytime you're ready to do so. So let's go ahead and get started. Uh, Maybe you'll remember in U.S. History A, you guys talked about World War I and the Great Depression and how that may have impacted society. And what we'll do today is we'll talk a little bit about how those two events lead to the rise of powerful leaders in Europe and Asia that basically are going to become dictators. So let's talk about your main ideas and your reading focus questions. All right, so as we go through these main ideas and these reading focus questions, you want to make sure that you're focusing on the information that you need to get from your reading and from these video lessons. So you want to try to answer these reading focus questions that are on the screen. Main idea: shattering effects of World War I helped set the stage for a new aggressive type of leader in Europe and Asia. So again, we'll be talking about how the Treaty of Versailles and the Great Depression combined to allow leaders like Mussolini and Hitler to rise to power. Your reading focus questions: how did the aftermath of World War I contribute to political problems in Europe? We'll talk about how political leaders and governments were weakened by the war and by the Depression, how the problems facing Europe in post-war years led to the rise of totalitarian leaders, what events exemplify the growing use of military force by totalitarian regimes. And we see that Hitler and Mussolini and the Japanese are going to become increasingly bold in using their military forces to gain power. And finally, the alarming actions that Hitler took in the mid-1930s. All right, so World War I caused the death of millions and the destruction of numerous cities and farms. I mean, it was incredibly damaging. I mean, you're talking about 20+ million people killed through the process of the war. So this was a deeply psychologically scarring war. In addition to that, the Treaty of Versailles, nobody really liked very much. France thought the treaty was too easy on Germany. Great Britain thought it was a little harsh. Italy was mad because they fought with the Allies in World War I, but they didn't get any of the territorial gains that they thought they would. They thought they were going to get part of Austria-Hungary and excuse me, and things like that, and they didn't get it. The most affected, obviously, though, was Germany, who was defeated in the war. They were kind of the leaders of the Central Powers during that time, so they were blamed for a lot of the damage of the war. So Germany lost some land in the war. One of the areas that they lost was the Rhineland, which was on the western part of their country, and it bordered France. And that's important because it was one of the most industrialized areas of Germany at the time. So they had lots of resources and things of that nature that they lost, and it really harmed their economy. Also, Germany was forced to pay reparations. They had to pay these huge payments to the other countries of Europe and North America that had war damage or had spent a lot of money fighting the war. And the combination of losing industrial land, paying these outrageous reparations, and the Great Depression limiting trade really led to economic collapse in Germany. And you had very severe inflation. Prices were real high. There are stories that came from Germany out of that time that said it would take a wheelbarrow full of cash to buy a loaf of bread. So this was obviously an issue. On top of that, the government in Germany that had taken power after the war, the Weimar Republic, was a weak government. It had lots of opposition from communists on the left and ultra-conservatives on the right, and it caused a lot of problems. And part of the reason Hitler is going to be placed in power is because he is an anti-communist, and the powers that be in the Weimar Republic believed that Hitler will help them control the communist threat. Also, people were really embarrassed and upset by the fact that the German military was greatly reduced in size and power. And this is going to be a rallying cry for Hitler and the Nazis. All right, so, European struggles and dissatisfaction as a result of the anger over the treaty and, of course, the terrible economic situations as a result of the Great Depression led to a lot of dissatisfaction. Anytime you have bad economies combined with weak governments, it's not a good situation. You talked about that way back in World Civ when you talked about the French Revolution. So leaders begin to emerge who can tap into this feeling of bitterness and anger. And they often will promise a return to greatness. They'll talk about, Hitler, for instance, talks about the Third German Reich or German Empire, returning Germany to its former glory. So this is appealing to a lot of people, whether they're Italian or German or Japanese or even Spanish. They hear these leaders talk about, returning their nations to power and empire and prestige and glory, and it sounds appealing to people. The first of these guys is Benito Mussolini. And Mussolini is in Italy, and he becomes the leader of the Italian government in 1922. He's basically named prime minister by the king, who didn't really have much power at that time. The king didn't. But Mussolini quickly becomes a dictator. He has this vision of a strong, orderly Italy that's appealing to a lot of people that have been dealing with the fallout from the war and with the uncertainty and chaos of the economic situation, all those kinds of things. And people are also, angry about the Treaty of Versailles. They hadn't gotten the territories that they thought they were going to get. So his fascist party that he forms, becomes the leading party in Italy. And fascism stresses the glory of the state, the importance of the nation as a whole instead of the individual. And Mussolini's idea of fascism is based on the Latin fascio, which means a bundle of sticks. And the reason I have these pencils is because I don't have sticks, but I want to illustrate what we're talking about. Mussolini believed that if you have one individual, they can be broken easily. If you have two separate individuals or groups, they can be broken easily. All right. However, if all of Italy's citizens and people and politicians are united together in one group for a common cause, it'd be much harder for basically the nation to be defeated. And that's the idea of fascism. So individual rights and concerns aren't necessarily important. And in fact, political parties and different political parties and things like that, according to Mussolini, would just weaken the fascists. So he established one-party control and a dictatorship and began a totalitarian regime. And totalitarian just means that the government tries to control all aspects of life: economic, political, social, everything. Hitler will institute some of the same ideas in Germany a little bit later. He was Austrian. He entered German politics because he was a soldier for Germany in the war, and he was angry and felt betrayed about the Treaty of Versailles. So he joined the Nazi Party, which is short for National Socialists. Now, I don't want to confuse you because National Socialists are not socialists. It's the name of their party, but they're much different than the communists and the socialists that you'll see in the Soviet Union. Anyway, the Nazi Party tried an ill-fated attempt to take control in 1923, but they were stopped, and as a result, Hitler was arrested. And while he's in prison, he wrote the book. He wrote the book Mein Kampf, which literally translated in German means "My Struggle." And this book outlines Hitler's political ideas. And his political ideas center around this idea of racial superiority of the German people, that the German people are somehow superior or better than other races. And he also has another aspect of this nationalist view that Jews are somehow to blame for Germany's problems. The argument being, if the German people are so great, how do you explain the loss in World War I? How do you explain the humiliation of the Treaty of Versailles? How do you explain all of these different things? And his simple solution is that it's the Jews' fault. The Jews betrayed us in the war. The Jews pushed us into signing this embarrassing treaty, and the Jews have destroyed our economy. His views become very popular. His anti-Semitic views and his nationalist views become very popular. So much so that in 1933 he's named the Chancellor of Germany, which is kind of like what our president, the office of the presidency would be now. So he's kind of president of Germany, and very soon he consolidates power. The Nazis march on the Reichstag, which is kind of like the Congress, and basically he becomes the total dictator of Germany and sets up a totalitarian government. One of his first things that he does is secretly begins to build up the German military. And of course this is a violation of the Treaty of Versailles, but he doesn't care. He's wanting to test it. So some other totalitarian regimes. In Spain, you had Francisco Franco, who came to power during the Spanish Civil War, and he was a fascist as well, although he's not going to really play much of a role as we move forward. In the Soviet Union, you had a totalitarian regime, but it wasn't fascist. Fascism and communism are on opposite ends of the spectrum. Communism is extreme liberalism. Fascism is extreme conservatism. So they're opposite ends politically, but really for people living in fascist and communist governments, they function almost the same. The restrictions of individual rights, the use of secret police and show trials and labor camps, execution, torture, all of those types of things are still going to be certainly true. And it's true in the Soviet Union especially. Stalin may have been even more damaging to his people than Hitler. In Japan, you see a different type of fascism rise. They still have the emperor, they still have the civilian leadership sort of, but they kind of, the military comes to power and pretty much ignores them and does what it wants to do. And the society in Japan was ordered around this nationalistic dreams of Japanese greatness and service to the emperor. All right, so in Japan, we see as the military gains power, they become more and more aggressive, and they invade Manchuria to try to get resources. When the civilian government does nothing about it, it becomes obvious that the Japanese military is in control. In Italy, you have Italy invades Ethiopia, trying to avenge their earlier loss to Ethiopia during the imperialist period, and the United Nations really does nothing. They give them a little slap on the wrist, a weak economic sanctions. So it emboldens more people. The Spanish Civil War is important because it becomes a dry run for World War II. All the different countries pour resources into the region to try to win, and the fascists wind up becoming victorious. So Hitler gains power. He takes a number of steps. First, after he rearms his military, he militarizes the Rhineland. Again, France and Britain do nothing. So then he annexes Austria. Again, they do nothing. And then he invades Czechoslovakia. And one more time, nothing is done. So when we get to the next part, we'll see what happens.